Prince Andrew was photographed with Jeffrey Epstein at his New York property and in a BBC Newsnight interview claimed he cut ties with the disgraced financier.
The royal family, the most famous family in the world, has just been sentenced. And people everywhere are asking the same thing. How did it come to this? For years, they've been at the center of scandals, controversies, and shocking headlines. But no one ever thought it would end like this. Now, some are saying it's justice, others think it's a setup, and a lot of people, they just can't believe it's real. So, what exactly happened? Why was the royal family sentenced? And does this mean it's really goodbye forever? Prince Andrew and the Epstein scandal. One of the biggest cracks in the royal family's foundation began with Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew, the Queen's son, once had a luxurious life filled with power and influence. But in 2019, everything changed. His connection with Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender, was exposed, and the world was furious. A woman named Virginia Giuffre accused him of something horrible, being involved in Epstein's crimes when she was underage. She said Prince Andrew assaulted her multiple times. Andrew denied everything. But when an old picture surfaced of him with Giuffre, things got worse. He claimed he had no memory of ever meeting her. But who forgets a picture like that? In a desperate attempt to clear his name, he gave a disastrous TV interview. He said he couldn't have done what he was accused of because, get this, he was at a Pizza Express restaurant with his daughter that day. The public didn't buy it. Instead of proving his innocence, the interview made things worse. He looked guilty. He looked like he was hiding something. The Queen had no choice but to take action. In early 2022, Andrew lost his royal titles and military honors. He was no longer called His Royal Highness. He also had to pay a huge settlement, rumored to be around $12 million, to Virginia Giuffre. The case never went to trial, but the damage was done. Even though he was never officially found guilty in court, his reputation was ruined forever. He disappeared from public life, and the world never saw him the same way again. But here's the real question. If he weren't a prince, would he have faced a real trial? King Edward VIII's abdication. Scandals in the royal family aren't new. Decades earlier, King Edward VIII gave up the throne, not because of war or illness, but for love. His relationship with Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee, was unacceptable to the British government and the Church of England. King Edward VIII was the ruler of Britain in the 1930s. He was supposed to be a strong leader, but there was one problem. He was in love with an American woman named Wallis Simpson. Wallis was not just any woman. She was twice divorced, and back then that was a big deal. The British government and the Church of England did not approve. Edward had a choice: love or power. And guess what? He chose love. He gave up the throne in 1936, making him the first and only British monarch to voluntarily step down. His younger brother, George VI, took over. That's right. If Edward had stayed king, Queen Elizabeth II might have never ruled. But here's where things get darker. After stepping down, Edward and Wallis moved to Europe, and soon, rumors started spreading. People believed he had Nazi connections. There were even photos of him shaking hands with Adolf Hitler. Some historians think that if Germany had won World War II, Edward could have been their puppet king. This scandal was so serious that Winston Churchill had to step in. Edward was sent far away to the Bahamas, where he lived the rest of his life in exile. The British government wanted people to forget about him. So, was it really just about love? Or was the royal family hiding a much bigger secret? Princess Diana's death and conspiracy theories. Everyone loved Princess Diana. She was kind, beautiful, and different from the other royals. She spoke about mental health, hugged people with AIDS when no one else would, and made the monarchy look more human. But her marriage to Prince Charles was a disaster. Charles was in love with Camilla Parker Bowles, even before he married Diana. Diana once famously said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." The couple divorced in 1996, and a year later, something terrible happened. On August 31, 1997, Diana was in a car in Paris with her boyfriend, Dodi Fayed. They were being chased by paparazzi. Suddenly, the car crashed inside a tunnel. Diana was seriously injured, and within hours, she was gone. Officially, the cause was a drunk driver speeding to escape the photographers. But not everyone believes that story. Why were the CCTV cameras in the tunnel not working that night? Why was the ambulance so slow? Why did some witnesses hear an explosion before the crash? Dodi Fayed's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, believes Diana was murdered by the royal family because they didn't want her to marry a Muslim man. Others think MI6, the British intelligence agency, was involved. Some even claim she was pregnant with Dodi's baby, and that was the real reason she had to be silenced. To this day, people still question what really happened. Was it just a tragic accident? Or was there something more sinister behind it? Taxpayer money and the royals beyond scandals. Another issue has been the financial burden the monarchy places on the British public. The British royal family lives in luxury: palaces, servants, private jets, and designer clothes. But here's something most people don't realize. They don't pay for it themselves. A huge part of their wealth comes from British taxpayers. Every year, millions of pounds are taken from ordinary people and given to the monarchy. And naturally, this has caused a lot of anger. But how much do they really get? The royal family receives money through something called the Sovereign Grant. This is a special fund set up by the government, and in 2023 alone, it gave the royal family £86.3 million. That's nearly £1.29 per person in the UK, money that could have gone to hospitals, schools, or public services. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but they do work for the country, right? That's what royal supporters say. They argue that the monarchy brings in billions through tourism, and that King Charles and Prince William attend diplomatic events that benefit the UK. But here's the problem. Not all royals actually work. While King Charles and Prince William take on official duties, many other family members live luxurious lives without doing much in return. Prince Andrew, for example, still lives in a massive royal estate despite being stripped of his royal titles. And let's not forget Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice, who receive financial benefits from the monarchy despite not being working royals. What makes people even angrier is the fact that the royal family doesn't pay the same taxes as ordinary people. While they do pay some taxes now, the monarch is still exempt from inheritance tax. This means that when Queen Elizabeth II passed away in 2022, King Charles inherited her entire fortune, valued at around £650 million, without paying a single penny in tax. Then there's Buckingham Palace. This massive palace costs millions to maintain. In recent years, renovations have cost over £369 million, and guess who's paying for that? The taxpayers. At a time when millions of Brits are struggling with energy bills, rising rent, and inflation, seeing the monarchy spend millions on fixing up golden chandeliers doesn't sit right with a lot of people. So, the big question is it time for the UK to stop funding the royal family? Many believe they should start paying their own way, like any other wealthy family. Others argue that the monarchy is still an important tradition. What do you think? Prince Charles and the Cash for Honours scandal. Now let's talk about one of the biggest scandals to hit the royal family in recent years. Prince Charles and the Cash for Honours scandal. In 2021, shocking reports came out that Prince Charles's charity was secretly helping wealthy businessmen get royal honors in exchange for massive donations. Basically, if you were rich enough and donated millions to his charity, you could get a knighthood or even British citizenship. One of the biggest names involved was Mahfouz Mareh Mubarak bin Mahfouz, a Saudi billionaire. He reportedly gave over £1.5 million to Charles's charity, and guess what? He was soon awarded one of Britain's highest honors, the CBE Commander of the British Empire. Now, Charles denied knowing anything about this, but his closest aide, Michael Fawcett, was caught in emails discussing fixing honors in exchange for money. Fawcett was forced to resign, but the scandal wasn't over. The police launched an official investigation. While Charles was never directly accused of any crime, the fact that his closest advisors were involved made people question: was he really unaware of what was happening? Or was he just smart enough not to leave any evidence? Even though Charles eventually became king, this scandal left a stain on his reputation. It made people wonder, If future kings are involved in shady dealings, can we really trust the monarchy? The arrests and the charges. Then came the moment no one expected. A deep investigation uncovered years of financial misconduct, abuse of power, and cover-ups. Hidden offshore accounts, misused taxpayer money, and scandals swept under the rug. One by one, high-ranking members of the royal family were taken into custody. King Charles, Prince William, Queen Camilla. Each of them escorted out of their palaces, surrounded by cameras, flashing lights, and the deafening sound of reporters shouting questions. But what were the charges? The list was long. Financial misconduct, abuse of power, and concealment of crimes. The monarchy had been accused of hiding billions in offshore accounts, using taxpayer money for personal luxury, and even covering up major scandals that could have ruined them years ago. People were outraged. For decades, the royal family had been protected. No matter what happened, they always seemed to walk away untouched. But this time, there was no escape. The courtroom drama. The trial began, and the world watched in silence. Could this really be happening? Could the royal family actually face justice? The courtroom was packed. Journalists, politicians, and even former royal supporters filled the seats. Every single person wanted to hear the truth. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Then, one by one, the royals were called to the stand. First, King Charles. He looked tired. His usual confidence was gone. His lawyer tried to defend him, but the evidence was overwhelming. Secret financial records were brought forward, showing millions of pounds being funneled into private accounts. Money that was supposed to be for the people. Stolen. When asked about it, Charles hesitated. His voice shook. "I was unaware of these transactions," he claimed. But the documents told a different story. Then, Prince William. Many believed he would be the one to save the monarchy. The people's prince, as some called him. But even he could not escape the storm. Leaked emails revealed that he had knowledge of illegal dealings within the royal family. He had seen the corruption, but had chosen to stay silent. When the prosecutor asked him why he never spoke up, he had no answer. And then, the final blow. A former royal staff member took the stand. A person who had worked inside the palace for years. Their testimony sent shockwaves through the courtroom. "There are things the public doesn't know," they said. "Things that have been hidden for decades." They revealed evidence of documents that had been destroyed, secrets that had been buried. And suddenly, it all made sense. The royal family had spent years protecting itself, no matter the cost. The verdict days turned into weeks. The trial was long, exhausting. Every piece of evidence was analyzed, every testimony dissected. And finally, the moment arrived. The judge returned to the courtroom. The entire world held its breath. After reviewing all evidence, the judge said, "This court finds the royal family guilty." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers. The impossible had happened. The punishment? Exile. The monarchy was abolished with immediate effect. No more kings, no more queens, no more royal palaces or taxpayer money funding their lifestyle. Within hours, Buckingham Palace was closed. Guards were removed. The gates, once a symbol of royalty, now stood empty. News channels across the globe covered the story. "The end of the British monarchy," headlines read. Some people cheered in the streets, celebrating what they called justice. Others were in shock, unable to believe that centuries of tradition had come to an end in just one trial. But as the royal family boarded a private plane, leaving the UK for good, one question remained. Was this truly the end? Or would the monarchy somehow find a way to return? What do you think? Would the world be better off without a royal family? Or did Britain just make the biggest mistake in history? Imagine waking up one day to the news that the royal family is no more. No more Buckingham Palace waving. No more royal weddings. No more King Charles or Prince William. Sounds crazy, right? But what if I told you that, even right now, there are serious conversations happening about whether the British monarchy should even exist. People are starting to ask, do we really need a king and queen in the modern world? For centuries, the royal family has been a symbol of tradition. But today, many believe that tradition is outdated. And here's the thing. This isn't just some wild internet debate. The idea of removing the monarchy is gaining real traction, not just in the UK, but in many parts of the world. People are turning against the royals. Let's start with the UK itself. There was a time when questioning the monarchy was unthinkable. The Queen was loved by almost everyone, and the royal family was seen as a source of pride. But times have changed. Scandals, financial controversies, and the younger generation's shift in values have all played a part in this growing movement against the royals. More and more people, especially young Brits, are asking, why should we still pay for a royal family that has no real power? They see the monarchy as a luxury that doesn't serve the people anymore. And they're not wrong. The UK taxpayers spend millions every year to maintain the royal lifestyle, from palace renovations to security costs. Meanwhile, many people in Britain are struggling with rising living costs. So naturally, this has sparked frustration. And guess what? Recent polls show that support for the monarchy is dropping fast. For the first time in history, nearly half of young people in Britain think the monarchy should be abolished. Think about that. Half. Just a few years ago, that would have been unthinkable. So, what happens? If more and more people start agreeing that the royal family should go, could there actually be a day when the UK says, enough is enough? We don't need a king anymore? The rest of the world is already moving on. If you think the UK is the only place where people are questioning the monarchy, think again. In fact, some countries are already cutting ties with the British royal family. Let's talk about Barbados first. In 2021, this small Caribbean nation made history by officially removing the Queen as their head of state. They decided they didn't need a monarch ruling over them from across the ocean. Instead, they became a fully independent republic. And here's the interesting part. After they did this, many other countries started considering doing the same. Right now, Jamaica, Australia, Canada, and even New Zealand are having serious discussions about leaving the monarchy behind. Leaders in Jamaica have already said they plan to hold a referendum, asking the people if they want to remove the king. And if Jamaica does it, others will likely follow. This raises a big question. What happens if more and more countries leave? The monarchy used to rule over a massive empire, but today, it's shrinking. If enough countries say goodbye to the king, could that be the final blow? Could the UK itself be next? Could the royal family actually be abolished? Now here's the biggest question of all. Could the monarchy in the UK actually be abolished? Could there be a day when Buckingham Palace is just another tourist attraction, with no king or queen living inside? Some experts believe it's very possible. They argue that if the public turns against the monarchy, politicians will have no choice but to act. After all, Britain is a democracy. If enough people demand a referendum on the monarchy's future, it could actually happen. But on the other hand, some believe the royal family will survive. Why? Because they've always found a way to adapt. When the monarchy faced scandals in the past, they worked hard to repair their image. King Charles is already trying to modernize the institution, cutting costs and making the family seem more in touch with everyday people. So, what do you think? Is the royal family doomed, or will they survive no matter what? Could there actually be a day when we see King Charles, Prince William, and the rest of the royals saying their final goodbyes? And just like that, a chapter in history closes. The royal family, once untouchable, now fades into the past, stripped of everything they once held dear. But is this truly the end, or just the beginning of something even more shocking? What happens next? Will they disappear into silence, or is there more to this story than meets the eye? Let me know your thoughts. Was justice truly served, or is there something bigger at play? If you found this story as unbelievable as it sounds, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more updates, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. Because trust me, this is far from over.